morning all. Call the regular meeting of the San Diego County Local Agency Formation Commission, August 5th, to order. First item is roll call.
Commissioner Salas,
Present.
Commissioner Desmond,
Here.
Commissioner Jacob,
Here.
Commissioner Kersey,
Here.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Here.
Commissioner Willis,
Here.
Commissioner Vanderman,
Present.
Commissioner Wells,
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Dedina is absent. Alternate Commissioner Cox is absent. Alternate Commissioner Kate is absent. Alternate Commissioner Lump. Alternate Commissioner Mathis is absent. There is a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, Commissioner Kersey, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Please face the stars and stripes and join me in our nation's pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda review.
Chair, I had a couple of clarifications. These aren't changes, but I just wanted to note that as we provided in the agenda, one of the public hearings that we scheduled today, what is this? Orchard Hills. Which number is Orchard Hills? I believe that's 6E. Is that right, Robert?
Yes.
D, excuse me. We went ahead and needed to cancel that. If there's anyone in the audience for that item, I apologize. Robert Berry can speak to any questions offline, but we anticipate bringing that back as early as October. And then, Commissioner, there are 3 other public hearing items right after that. They're all relatively straightforward from LAFCO's perspective. They do require some formality because we're moving some spheres, but we are going to move quickly. So if there are questions on the Commission's radar on any of those items, E, F, and G, maybe have them in the mental queue, because otherwise staff is going to hand that back to the chair pretty quickly. And then last but not least, some of you will notice we have cameras here today. So this is part of our adopted work plan. We have Mike and Carlos from Blue Barn Media. It's going to take a couple of meetings to kind of smooth out some edges, but nonetheless, the goal is starting to get these meetings recorded and back on our website in 2 to 3 days. So bear with us. There's going to be some smoothing of edges, but we'll go from there. And other than those clarifications, we are good with the agenda.
Thank you. And I notice we have new air conditioning units.
We do, and admittedly, I'm not quite sure about what is right behind Commissioner Desmond, but nevertheless, it is what it is.
There's a major remodel, from what I understand, going on upstairs, and that is for it, and don't ask me anything more about it. It looks really strange.
Interesting. Okay. Okay, moving right along in the interest of time. Item number 4 is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the commission on any item that is not on the agenda? Seeing no one popping up, let's go on to the consent calendar. Commissioner, is there any item on the consent calendar that anyone would like to pull for further discussion? Staff?
Yep.
Seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
I have a second from Mr. Kersey. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Vanderman,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacob,
Yes.
Commissioner Kersey,
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Willis,
Aye.
Commissioner Salas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wells,
Aye.
Commissioner Desmond.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 6 will go into our public hearings. Item number 6A is the final report and related actions on the municipal service review on the San Diego County Sanitation District. Staff
So,
report.
very good. So before I hand this item off to Linda, I wanted to offer up just a few framing comments on the scheduled municipal service review on the San Diego County Sanitation District. really for our audience benefit, this item, as well as the MSR we have in a little bit later on the agenda for the Escondido region, this is part, Commission, of your new task, relatively speaking, to check in every 5 years on the level, adequacy, and performance of local governmental services as you see it, and relative to your all your boundary-making ways. And there are 3 purposes, okay, that we use these municipal service reviews. First and foremost, we take the information out of these documents, and they inform our other tasks under state law to update spheres of influence for all 100+ special districts and cities in San Diego County, again, every 5 years. We also use these documents to evaluate boundary changes that come up over the next 60 months. And then separately, if there is merit, okay, these are the documents, the vehicles under state law for you either to recommend or on your own initiate changes in local government, like forming, consolidating, merging, or even in some cases dissolving special districts. So certainly these documents are not for the shelf. They have real uses going forward. With that said, I'm going to hand this item off to Linda for the presentation, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much. Linda.
Thank you, and happy Monday morning to everyone. This MSR was originally presented in June as the first draft, so for the sake of brevity, I will be skipping through some items, so please stop me if you have any questions. This MSR is the first real comprehensive update since the 2010 reorganization, which consolidated the small, kind of struggling maintenance and sewer districts. It is made up of 7 sewer service areas or wastewater areas. Overall, it is distinctly different. The smallest sewer service area, East Otay Mesa, has about 8 residents, all the way up to Spring Valley, which has over 90,000 residents. The largest takeaway from this MSR is really just the best case scenario. It is a very successful reorganization. It is a very functional reorg. It's streamlined administrative and operational services for wastewater services in the unincorporated areas. The district itself has adequate or excess capacities, and overall it is in a positive financial standing. I'll be moving on to the recommendations. There are 10 recommendations. I will be just touching on the new additional ones since June, which are number 6 through 8. Number 6 talks about revisiting the rate restructuring in the next MSR cycle. This is directed towards LAFCO. Currently, the district is in the 3rd year of their rate restructuring. By 2021, they should be finished, and in 2022, we should be seeing their results. Their aim is to stabilize their reserve funds and not have to draw down from their reserves to offset operational costs. Number 7 is a recommendation towards the district and Otay Water District to explore reorganization efforts in the Jamaica Basin area. There are a lot of intertwined existing wastewater services that could be met better. And number 8, LAFCO encourages wastewater reuse programs such as the one that is in a new development stage, the East County Advanced Water Purification Program. Those are really the new updates since June. If you have any questions, please feel free.
Any questions from the commissioners? At this time, I will open the public hearing for comments from the audience. I have no speaker slip, but is anyone here for this item? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion? So moved.
Second.
Have a motion to approve the staff report? Roll call.
Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
Commissioner Wells?
Yes.
Commissioner Salas?
Aye.
Commissioner Willis?
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes.
Commissioner Kersey?
Aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderlin?
Aye.
8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you. Item 6B is the sphere of influence update for San Diego County Sanitation District.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to take this item quickly on behalf of Linda, and I also want to extend my appreciation to Robert Berry, who helped us get this item to you rather quickly, because we are drawing on now the completed municipal service review document as part of your requirement to update San Diego County Sanitation District sphere of influence as part of this 5-year cycle. And just for the audience benefit, we do this for the purpose of the commission looking at the line you have previously drawn, right, and updating it as you see fit to demark what you believe represents the district's appropriate and near-term service area over the next 5 years. And the legislative connection to all of this is, with very few exceptions, Commission, any annexations that come forward, any requests for outside service extensions, they need to conform with the sphere of influence. I will add that, as we've talked about over the last few years, one of our goals here in San Diego is to start making these sphere updates kind of more one and done, in the sense that once you perform an update on the sphere, our goal is that you don't touch that sphere for the next 5 years, right? That we have done enough analysis where we have identified all of the areas that would likely come forward. And if anyone comes forward in that 60-month period, unless they have a really good reason, we would like to defer them to your update process. And that way, the spheres become more stable, and you look at them and you consider changes really once every 5 years. So that's a little added context to where we're trying to go. That said, when we look at this district sphere of influence, 2 immediate thoughts come up. First and foremost, and if you can go to the first slide here, one more slide. This district and its 7 service areas, a couple of things. First, there's already existing non-jurisdictional land within the sphere that your predecessors many years, or actually about 6 years ago, put in. So there's still room to grow, right? So that's the first comment. The second comment is, certainly staff has identified a few places, and we've identified it in your staff report, that maybe it does make sense down the line to expand the sphere, but we're not there yet. So our recommendation to you today is to simply move forward with a cursory update, affirm the baseline, make no changes to the existing sphere. So that means for the central corridor, if you go back one slide, Viv, the sphere as you see it today, and better reflected in your agenda report for Alpine Lakeside, Spring Valley, Winter Gardens, East Otay Mesa, and then going to the east, Pine Valley, Julian, Campo. We just keep the same designations, no changes. So that's our core recommendation to you today. That said, for the benefit of doing some telegraphing, in your report, we've identified a few places that are on staff's mind and that we think should be on the Commission's mind over the next 5 years, and in particular when you get to the next update cycle. And these 3 areas are up here just for the benefit of illustration. So Mount Helix is an area that at some point we should have a discussion on the dais about adding to the district sphere. Same with, there's a handful of kind of unique islands located throughout the 7 service areas. One of them we've reflected on the map as an example, East Pepper Drive, where it's completely surrounded by the district, but for different reasons it's outside the sphere. And then, perhaps with the most amount of analysis needed, the very last map, the 3rd map, deals with the issue of disadvantaged unincorporated communities, right? And so on this map, all the lands in red, under state law and our own policies, qualify as a DUC, right? And so under statute, Commission, you are on the hook to really evaluate the merits of adding any adjacent DUC lands to this agency's sphere of influence. And as you can see, that would be a big lift in a lot of areas. So what we are saying is, we would have to do a whole lot of analysis and work with the communities and work with the district to be able to justify why you either would add some or just simply keep out some of these DUC lands. So This is all about telegraphing, and it gives us an ability to go to the district over the next 60 months and start these conversations. But again, the baseline recommendation for you today is keep the status quo, and then staff will start working with the district on these potential changes down the line. So our recommendation is provided as alternative action 1. This is a public hearing, and I already saw one hand from Commissioner Willis.
Oh, that's why I was getting.
Okay, very
Thank
good.
you. Yes, Commissioner Willis.
When was the last sphere of influence update? When was the last summer?
So actually, it was when this district was created back in 2011. So this is actually the first time we have gone back and looked at the sphere in this holistic manner. Once you get done with this update, you're on the hook in 5 years to come back to it. And not supposing what you do in 5 years, but at least you have to do a check-in.
And there were no requests for changes since that 2011, all that time?
Well, no, we've done some individual amendments here and there, but generally speaking, the sphere has stood the test of time.
Are there any other questions?
That's not a question. So why wouldn't, I mean, in the case of islands, it looks like obviously that it's going to happen. So why wouldn't, in the one example you showed, there was an island there. Why not put that in the new sphere of influence?
Well, part of that is, we're not quite sure why it was excluded in the past, so I'm guessing there might be a community issue where there's a signal that they don't want to have the associated intensification tied to being in a urban service provider. But it's a good question. We can certainly look into that, but since this area has been in the sphere, or excuse me, excluded from the sphere since 2011, and no one has come forward with an annexation request, it suggests to me that there is, again, reasons that we're just not aware of. So this and others, we're suggesting let's tackle this all together as part of a more comprehensive update. But if the commission would like us to do that analysis now, we certainly can.
Well, you say you're going to be doing that between now and the next 5 years, within the next 5 years. Okay. I guess if no one's come forward, then, potentially, I guess nobody's asking why wake them up, I guess, or to that effect. But it just seems that over time, to fill those islands is going to be an easier thing to do with the spheres. They make more sense in the spheres, actually.
Thank you. That was one of my questions, why over little white spots.
Madam Chair, Keene is right. There are reasons for these areas not to be in a sphere of influence and not be in a sanitation district. And I would just ask if there's any further analysis to be done. What Keene indicated is to find out first why they're not in, and to make sure if there's anything that goes on in these areas, Mount Helix or the Pepper Drive area, that the people in the area are informed of what's going on. And the same with the duck areas. It's good to remember that 2/3 of our eastern part of our county is groundwater dependent, and they're all on septic systems. And that's where we have probably the most affordable housing in the whole region. And while you call it a disadvantaged area, it's not to the people who live out there, because they're totally self-sufficient with their water, their sewer, and everything. So I think we need, I know according to the law, you're gonna have to look at that, but I would tread very carefully on those duck areas. My first inclination, my gut tells me, leave them alone. They're doing fine.
Any other comments from the commission? Questions? Mr. Wells?
Thanks. I had a question, kind of one along with the supervisor's statement. A lot of people out in these areas are in septic, and I know that these leach fields were designed for about 30 years. What happens when we start getting past that point, and those leach fields are no longer usable, and people want to start moving over to city water? How does what we're talking about now influence that or affect that?
Well, it certainly affects it in terms of you use the spheres in part to direct the district, and in particular this example, you use the spheres to tell San Diego County Sanitation District where to start doing capital improvement planning, right? So if you add areas to their sphere, you are implicitly telling them to start adding capital improvement planning to accommodate services. So if landowners start coming at the end of their 30 to 40 year cycle of their well or their septic systems, and they're outside the sphere, Our policy comment to them is remedy on your own, because we've left them outside the sphere. But by putting these in, at least these telegraphing areas, you're giving staff the opportunity to work with the district in kind of a hybrid approach, where if someone in these ducts is starting to have issues, we're on notice that the commission has at least been made aware that this is a topic of interest, and have encouraged staff to at least start the dialogue. But as then Commissioner Jacobs said, also realize there are these other land use issues in play, because whether you agree with it or not, public water and public wastewater is viewed as a path towards intensification.
May I add to that? I think we're drawing a very fine line here. Maybe it's a hard line between the responsibility of the individual property owner who is on septic, and they like being on septic, and then government coming in and saying, no, you need to belong to a sewer district, you need to pay a lot more money. And I would say people choose to live out there. In our general plan update, our update downzoned our backcountry area for a lot of reasons. And as far as the operability, because I've lived on a well septic system, as long as you pump out your system, your leach fields are fine. They're in the ground, everything works fine. If you don't pump out in your septic system, I mean, if you want to get into details, happy to do that, but it gets all plugged up, and your leach field will plug up, and because the solids will build up in the septic tank. So as long as you take care of it, maintain it, but I would strongly suggest that this is an individual responsibility of the property owner who chose to live in a situation like this and accepts that cost and responsibility of taking care of it. So.
Thanks for educating me. I didn't know really anything about septic systems.
I am happy to go into it in more detail if you like. Wells, all of it.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I have no speaker slips. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission on this? Okay, I opened up the hearing. Now I will quickly close the public hearing. Roll call.
I think we need a motion.
Oh, you need a motion?
Move for the staff recommendation.
Second.
He's got to move this along quickly, in essence of time, because everybody's got time constraints for some reason. So,
It's good.
motion. Second.
Second to the motion.
Get the motion in a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Aye.
Commissioner Kersey?
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Aye.
Commissioner Salas?
Aye.
Commissioner Wells?
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderline?
Aye.
8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you. Going on to item number 6C, the Palma Valley Joint Reorganization. We have a staff report.
We do. Linda?
Good morning again. So here we have item 6C, Palma Valley Fire Joint Reorganization, a concurrent divestiture of fire protection and EMS by Mudamai, Uwima, and Palma Municipal Water Districts, and Lane Power expansion of fire protection and EMS by County Service Area number 135, or CSA 135. So this proposal was received by LAFCO by the 4 subject agencies. Palma Valley, or the affected territory, basically it is co-terminus with the 3 MWD's sphere of influence. This lies in between Valley Center and Palomar Mountain. The area made up of itself is about 29 square miles, excuse me. 1/5 of the total lands is under public ownership. Over 2,200 full-time residents live in the area, and there are over 1,000 registered voters. Zoning consists of low density and agricultural uses. There are 2 main stated reasons for this proposal. The first one being County Fire Authority to directly assume CAL FIRE's contract from the 3 MWDs and expand CSA 135. The second is a cost avoidance to each of the water districts. They would not be paying for the existing CAL FIRE contract. It would be directly to County Fire Authority, which is in line with the county regionalization plan for CSA 135 to take over fire protection services. Over the years, the county has been providing these rural unincorporated areas with subsidies for fire protection and EMS. Currently, we are in the last phase of directing those monies to CSA 135. A little bit of background about the joint proposal. The 3 water districts were formed in the early to mid-1960s and established a JPA in 1976 for this CAL FIRE contract, otherwise known as the Amador contract. The county has been providing subsidies, as we mentioned before, to the 3 MWDs. With the phasing out of these subsidies, it is really to streamline and make more efficient the fire protection and EMS services in the unincorporated areas. And CSA number 135 is the vehicle to do this. During our staff analysis, we've identified several boundary modifications. 2 are immediate, quite easy cleanups. They are, and I will direct your eyes. Thank you. The first being basically a hole in CSA 135 around 17 acres, and then the next being quite small, over an acre, and that just is a historical area. Whoever was making the map, chose one line to follow than the other. The last boundary modification that was found is actually an unserved island outside of the affected territory in between CSA 135, which is the yellow that surrounds the affected territory. It is about 200 acres. It is federally owned. For the lack of outreach to this unserved island, it is not appropriate at this time to include it in the district boundary. However, as I will talk next, it is appropriate to include it in the sphere of influence. So there are 3 alternatives that staff recommends. The first one being approve the reorganization with the modifications, include the unserved island in the sphere of influence, and this would require County Fire Authority to submit a subsequent separate proposal in the future, meaning that they would have to do outreach to these landowners, and LAFCO would accept and provide a fee waiver as well. And then second, disapprove this proposal. I'm sorry, that is third. Third is disapprove the proposal, and number 2 is if we need to talk about the contents of the proposal, we would push it to October 7th. And I believe there may be some speakers in the audience here for this item.
I have one speaker slip, yeah. Other questions to staff? I have one question. I noticed that there's several islands within Uema's Municipal Water District within their sphere, Mutamai and Palma Municipal Water District. Is there any history as to why those islands are there?
The islands that staff recognizes are the Indian reservations that are within the district. Other than that, I will have to defer to Robert.
excuse me, UEMA is a CWA member, as you know.
Right.
The other districts are single service districts within the UEMA boundaries that either provide groundwater or wastewater services, the CSD being one of them. There have been long discussions of merging all those districts onto UEMA as the imported water provider, but those are ongoing. There's also a number of state efforts to bring in some of the residential areas within there because of the drinking water problems in groundwater. That whole area is under discussion for a number of purposes, but consolidation of the water districts is one of them.
I know we've been talking about that for the last 20 years,
The CWA issue is a major one.
and I think they're on the state board's list of.
That's the other meetings that we've been attending, is trying to figure out how the state can bring in the disadvantaged areas within there, given the CWA requirements.
Okay. Commissioner Desmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few questions on the map. There's a couple of boxes up in the, I guess, the northernmost section there that are not proposed as modifications right now. Look like they're in the Palma Municipal Water District. Why are those not included in this, or are they included? I can't really tell. Are those other two boxes part of the modification?
Everything in red is part of the proposal.
Everything in red, okay, all right, so everything in red is part of that. And then, I guess, money. I see there's balances left in some of these water districts' accounts. Is there currently a tax or a fee or for the fire districts in place right now? Or is there none, and if there is, would that be coming then to the county or CAL FIRE?
The monies left in the balance in the staff report are referring to the undesignated fund balance. The subsidy that we're mentioning, I believe collectively, were about $41,000 each year towards JPA to subsidize fire protection. That would be going directly to CSA 135.
Okay, but so right now, there are monies coming in, I guess, from each of these districts to pay partially, I guess, for the fire services.
Yes, correct.
And those monies then would be coming, okay, into CSA 135.
I believe it would be staying within the district.
So is it county money, or is it a special assessment in these districts? I think
That's what I'm trying to
I
figure
think
out,
that's
is
what the supervisor's
The
asking.
flow of dollars, that's paying right now for the fire services, is that flow of dollars now going to come to CAL FIRE or CSA 135?
I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to, staff can correct me, or Chief Meacham can correct me, but there was a property tax agreement adopted here that's at no exchange, I believe. And so, all the general proceeds that currently go to these 3 MWDs that historically have then gone to support fire protection, an agreement has been reached by the affected parties to keep that money to the MWDs. Partly because that money has never been able to fully support fire protection to begin with. The county has had to come in and backfill it. So, by way of an agreement of the affected agencies, no new monies are being transferred that currently go to the 3 MWDs over to the county. What Linda was referencing is the county is essentially going to save money because they're going to stop doing the subsidy, right? So instead of handing money over to the 3 MWDs going forward, they're just going to keep that money for themselves as part of their now obligation, right? This is fundamentally changing who is responsible for fire protection services in this area. They're going to keep that money that otherwise they have been providing to the 3 MWDs as a subsidy.
And the delta between what is actually needed and what the county's been providing now is?
I think it's 41,000 roughly each, and maybe I'll defer to the chair to Chief Meacham.
Chief Meacham?
Hey, good morning,
Clarify.
Commissioners. Yeah, maybe I can provide some clarity to this. So when the Joint Powers Agreement was formed in 1976, the 3 water districts imposed a benefit assessment fee to cover the cost of fire services. As salaries and benefits and all the other costs you're aware of have increased over the last 43 years, that benefit fee has not kept in line with salaries. Currently, there's approximately $60,000 that's collected through the benefit fee. No current property tax allocation from any of the 3 water districts is used for fire protection. Approximately 7 years ago, when the Fire Authority was formed, there was this revenue gap between the expenditure to keep the CAL FIRE station open the 3 months in the winter and what the agencies were able to fund through their benefit fee. The county stepped in and provided a fire enhancement subsidy, knowing that once the fire authority was built out, that fire districts would have to make the decision to either join the fire authority or continue under their own independent financial means. So the roughly $60,000 in the fire benefit assessment fee will transfer over to County Service Area 135, but because the 3 districts were currently not allocating any of their baseline property tax to fire protection, we initiated a net zero property tax transfer. Otherwise, we would have been in a position to cause undue financial harm on the 3 water districts' ability to continue operating. So hopefully that provides some clarity and answers the question.
So the water districts keep the property tax, all of it, and the county fire authority gets the benefit assessment.
Yes, so we bring in the $60,000, the existing subsidy, which we've been giving to UEMA to then pay the CAL FIRE agreement. The county will just now include that as part of their overall agreement with CAL FIRE for services.
So how much has the county, what was the number the county's been subsidizing, I guess, at this point?
It depends year in year, roughly anywhere from $100,000 to $140,000 a year.
Okay, so that's been the subsidy right now. All right, I just wanted to get the kind of the trail of money and how that was all going to work out. All right, thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from the commission? Okay, at this time I will open the public hearing, and I have one speaker slip. Warren, Cal?
Good morning, I'm Warren Lyle.
Oh, Lyle.
Yes, I'm a Palm
Okay,
Valley
yeah.
resident and the president of Palm Municipal Water District. And I speak in favor of this proposal. We, as a water district, have, our board has adopted a resolution to transfer these powers to CSA 135. And I was expecting Lori Johnson, who was representing Mutamai. I don't see her here today, but she was planning to speak in favor. And in my conversations with the UEMA group, they also have spoken in favor and have adopted resolutions. I can't speak for them, but just say that in conversation I know that they're in favor. This makes sense for us to provide some stability for us because yes, our part of this fee was coming out of our general revenue, and although our budget is quite small, it did impact our budget significantly. So thank you for your consideration on this.
Thank you. I have no more speaker slips either in support or in opposition. Seeing no one else, I will close the public hearing. Is there any
Move to
further
approve.
discussion?
Second.
Motion? Have a motion and a second?
Commissioner McKenzie?
Aye.
Commissioner Kersey?
Aye.
Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
Commissioner Salas?
Aye.
Commissioner Wells?
Yes.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderland?
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you.
And Chair, we will report back probably at our next meeting the results of the protest hearing.
Item number 6E is the Lomas de Oro change of organization, detachment from Leucadia District.
Great, and so as Alex gets ready, these are the 3 hearing items I mentioned earlier that we're going to move pretty quickly. So if there's questions, be ready, Commissioner.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Duke. All right, this is my first presentation on proposal, I guess, so hopefully it goes smoothly. This is a proposal for a detachment of 2 incorporated parcels from the Leucadia Wastewater District into the city of Encinitas, in which the territory is presently located. Small territory, 1.6 acres, petitioned by landowner, 100% consent. Environmental review is exempt under 15320 because it doesn't change the service area it doesn't change service area geographically since the territory is already located in the city of Encinitas. We do have a modification of an additional .11 acre area to prevent the creation of possibly the smallest island in San Diego County. So just to make it a contiguous detachment there. And detachment is required as a condition of service by the city of Encinitas in order to facilitate connection to a public infrastructure extension project, which the territory, the properties will be connecting their wastewater services to. So staff recommends approval with modification.
Okay. Any quick questions from the commission? I have one quick question. Was any public outreach done to that parcel in between the two?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that the larger area, which assumably includes that parcel, is being looked at by the city of Encinitas as the extension project moves forward to facilitate connection in that area to the sewer line extension.
And just to add to that, so the city of Encinitas did their own survey to get this to us. And so all of those property owners got some notice from Encinitas saying, we're doing an improvement to the Oliva Hain trunk line. You want to join sewer? Now's your time. These two property owners came forward. So we assume the one in the middle decided they want to keep their money and roll the septic.
And roll the dice. Do you have a timeline on that trunk line?
It's, right now, what's available publicly is that they're finishing the design phase.
Okay.
And they're like 90% completed with design phase, and then they'll move into construction thereafter.
Okay. Has there been any discussion with Encinitas? Is this improvement going to be redlined for the other property owners? So when they come in later, they'll end up paying their fair share at a later date, in other words?
Yes.
This is E. I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? I have no speaker slips at this time. I will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Staff
I have a motion. I have a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Aye.
Commissioner Salas?
Aye.
Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
Commissioner Wells?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderling?
Aye.
Commissioner Kersey?
Aye.
8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 6F is the public hearing for the Salem Snyder Road change of organization annexation to the Otay Water District. Staff report.
This and the next are Robert.
Good morning, Robert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. The Salem Snyder Road proposal involves annexation to the Otay Water District of one parcel. It's about 1.5 acres developed with one single-family home. Property owners requesting annexation to Otay to avoid future septic problems. Otay has an existing wastewater main in Crest Lake Drive. Yes, Crest Land, excuse me. Approximately 200 feet from the property. Main will be extended shortly in front of the affected territory. Connection will occur through a private easement along the parcel. Parcel is 1.5 acres, zoned as rural residential with a 1 acre minimum, so the extension to sewer cannot create additional densities other than accessory units. It's currently in Helix Water District, which does not provide water or wastewater service. So the request for annexation to Otay also involves a sphere amendment because it's in the Helix Water District sphere and not Otay's sphere of influence. Otay is consented to the annexation. We have 100% consent of the landowner. Under CEQA, the amendment to the sphere of influence to include the property is considered exempt under the general rule, where it can be seen with a certainty that spheres of planning tools and won't have an effect on the environment. The annexation to Otay is also exempt under 15319A, which involves exemptions for annexations of existing development that's already developed up to the limits of the zoning. The property tax exchange would be governed by an existing master property tax exchange agreement, so no property taxes will be exchanged. We have no modifications on this proposal. Your commission is recommended to approve as submitted. Have any questions?
Any questions of staff?
I make a motion that we adopt.
I need to open up the public hearing. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing, and I have no speaker slips. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Now you're on. Now it's your turn.
I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
A motion,
Second.
and a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Kersey?
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Aye.
Commissioner Salad?
Aye.
Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
Commissioner Wells?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanderland?
Aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Aye.
8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you. 6G is the windmill construction reorganization. Staff report. Robert, you're on again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The windmill reorganization involves annexation of a 0.13 acre vacant parcel to the city of La Mesa. This small parcel is right on the edge of the I-8 corridor. It's contiguous with the city of La Mesa, but it is not in the La Mesa sphere of influence. It's currently in Helix Water District for water services and San Miguel Consolidated Fire Protection District for fire services. As part of the annexation of the city of La Mesa, it would be detached from San Miguel Fire District as well as County Service Area number 135, because the city would take over those services following the annexation. The city has a fire station, Station 13, about a half mile from the site. This is located in the Valle de Oro unincorporated community planning group. The landowner intends to develop one single-family home on the vacant property. The city has adopted pre-zoning of semi-rural estate, which requires a half-acre minimum. The property would be grandfathered as non-conforming and would not allow for additional density other than an accessory unit. We do have one modification to include the frontage portion of the right-of-way for Grossmont Boulevard directly in front of the property. This would extend the city's boundary just a little bit westward so that the access to the property will be part of the city's circulation system. The main purpose of the annexation is to get wastewater service from La Mesa. This was originally submitted to us as an out-of-agency service agreement. The city decided to condition the extension of service on annexation. So they had to do a general plan amendment, adopt pre-zoning, et cetera. So here we are for the annexation. We have 100% consent of the landowner. Under CEQA, the sphere of influence change would be exempt under the general rule. Again, as spheres are planning tools, and can be seen with a certainty it won't have an effect on the environment. The annexation would also be exempt, or reorg, I should say, under 15319B, which involves annexations of small lots, which allow for 3 units or less. We're building one single-family home, so it would be exempt. La Mesa and the county have adopted a master property tax exchange agreement that would govern the exchange of property taxes. Under that agreement, the city would receive 38% of the detaching agency's revenues as part of the transfer. Wastewater is available approximately 200 feet away within the city. The city has the ability to extend services. We have, again, 100% consent, so we can waive protest, and we have exemptions from CEQA in hand. The modification would add approximately 0.7 of an acre, so the total proposal area is 0.2 of an acre. So as modified, your commission is recommended for approval of the sphere amendment and reorganization of the Mesa.
I just have one question. Will it fall under the Helix Water District for water service?
No changes to Helix it will continue to get water from Helix as part of the Mesa.
Madam Chair, this is the second item. The one before and this one are in the Mount Helix area. I just want to make sure staff, even though they're small, makes a lot of sense, that the Valadier Planning Group is informed of these, and also the Grossmont Mount Helix Improvement Association. Both of those should be informed about what's going on in their area.
We work very closely with Valle de Oro on boundaries as well as the out-of-agency service agreements. From the Jack Phillips era, we've been very sensitive
How
of
about GMIA?
their concerns. The improvement group is not one that's on our radar as.
Could you put it on?
Absolutely.
Please, I
Sure.
think that's important, because they represent several thousand people in that Rosemont, Mount Helix area, and they're very involved.
We're always very sensitive to notify the community planning groups in the unincorporated areas. We take great pains to make sure that they're involved as early as possible.
That's great.
But the improvement group I wasn't aware of, so we'll make sure that they're included.
My office can provide you contact info,
Thank you.
but I appreciate that, thank you.
Kathleen Hedberg is the president of that this year. Okay, at this time I will open the public hearing, and I have 2 speaker slips. One is from Chief Brainerd.
Morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Just have some very brief comments. When this went to a full reorganization back in February of 2019, my office doesn't have any record of being notified. I completely agree and believe that we've taken care of that issue, but we want to be involved in these types of scenarios in the future. Example, in this particular case, I absolutely agree that it makes sense to move this from San Miguel into La Mesa because they're closer. There are going to be times, and there have been times, when the fire district remains the closest first response unit. And when the property is transferred to, in this case, a La Mesa or an El Cajon, and then we lose that revenue stream, that's obviously a concern for the fire district. So that's really where my comments are this morning. I didn't want to bring it up. I understand. I basically support this process in this particular case. If you have any questions.
Chief, you were not notified though?
No. Everything comes first-class mail. I get a lot of LAFCO. I'm just saying we've created a process where we won't have that potential mistake again on our part. I get lots of mail from LAFCO, so I fully believe that it did come out. But we wouldn't have been notified until March of this year because before it wasn't a full reorganization. It's only when it went full that we would have been then included. So I believe that it came. I'm just saying that we didn't provide you back any written comment because I don't have the documents. But I'm not at all believing that LAFCO did not inform me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My next speaker is Steve Abbott, representing the San Diego County Fire District Association.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the commission and LAFCO staff. Forgive my appearance. I'm actually staycationing down here the next few days, and I was deliberating whether to come in or not. It was the donuts that brought me in. These are hands down the best, in all seriousness. Representing fire districts, we too in this case think this makes a lot of sense. But to echo Chief Brainerd's concerns, it can create some real interesting dynamics when you're talking about larger parcels of land and exchange rates, especially when the fire district continues to be the closest service provider. And that's important. The so what piece of that is not only financial, but it's also from the automatic aid, and that is a huge big deal. In this county, we enjoy automatic aid or drop boundary agreements that are second to none. And those are very functioning, they're functioning quite well all throughout the county. Interestingly, we just heard from Brian Fennessy, who is now the Orange County Fire Chief, was the San Diego City Fire Chief. And he said, here we are in a very robust system in Orange County, and we don't enjoy, meaning Orange County, the same level of automatic aid drop boundary agreements as we do here in San Diego. So he said, consider yourself very, very lucky. Counterpart in LA County, working for a small city, is experiencing exactly those same challenges. So my suggestion would just be not so much in this case, but moving forward, to really be mindful of the net impacts. And to add on to that, those arrangements are very, very complex. They're not always a tit for tat. They're sometimes very dynamic. For example, one agency might provide more automatic aid by the numbers in exchange for some other more complex, robust resource in exchange, which is very costly, but may occur a lot less frequently. And not only that, automatic aid to truly be automatic aid is typically a like-for-like service. And the reason why these works is because throughout the decades, fire chiefs have been allowed to discuss these things and come up with a mutually symbiotic relationship that works for all agencies involved. So anyway, I will close my comments with that unless there's any questions.
Any questions? No questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Move staff recommendation. I just moved the staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Willis. Roll call.
Commissioner Wells,
Yes.
Commissioner Salas,
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Desmond,
Yes.
Commissioner Kersey,
Aye.
Commissioner Willis,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacob,
Aye.
8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 7A, under business items is the draft municipal service review on the Escondido region. This is part 1.
It is part 1, and I'm going to hand this item off to Alex in a second, but there are a couple of unique pre-production comments that are worth getting on the commission's radar as you take in this item. And again, this is our scheduled, per the work plan, municipal service review on the Escondido region. And Commission, we've done something a little unique at the staff level. We have bifurcated or divided this scheduled review into 2 distinct phases or parts. So part 1, which is what is before you today, is the draft service review for 2 of the 3 agencies in the region that are under your purview. That being Deer Springs Fire Protection District and then Rincon Del Diablo Municipal Water District. Part 2 is for another day, and that is going to be specific to the city of Escondido. Also of uniqueness, that document, part 2 is actually, a lot of the lifting is being done directly by the city of Escondido. Some of you may be aware that they are processing, and have been for many years, a rather large development to their east, the Safari Highlands project. And so, by way of a prior arrangement with LAFCO staff that predates my employment, we agreed to allow the city to have a more involved role in getting that document going because they need to address specific issues with respect to the Safari Highlands project as they get it ready for presentation to the Commission. That all said, we will reconcile these 2 parts at the end of the process, but nevertheless, we are dividing it and we're starting it with Rincon and Deer Springs, and Alex is going to tell us what we've learned with respect to key takeaways and recommendations today. So Alex, thank you.
Alex, you're on.
Thank you, Keen. And it's up for debate whether sequels are better than the original, but I'm partial to the original. So that being said, this is the check-in on the Escondido region as it pertains to Deer Springs and Rincon, and their very close-knit nature to the city of Escondido. We've assessed the service capacities, demands, and performance of the 2 agencies in order to provide information for the intent of the commission to be able to make decisions as it goes forward relating to regional growth management. And we've distilled down the MSR report into 7 central conclusions, which can also be seen as themes of the MSR that have emerged through our analysis and assessment of the 2 agencies. First 2 are pretty standard findings. They're in good financial standing, both the agencies. They have adequate and available capacities through the services that they provide. Changing roles for both agencies speaks on the nature of the positioning of the 2 agencies sort of as placeholders for ongoing development in the region, located at the urban and rural interface there in both incorporated and unincorporated portions of North County. The remainder of the conclusions echo sort of a complex, not going to say issue in the region, but just something that we noticed. There's some overlap between the agencies and the city of Escondido, and also just the interesting nature of the spheres of the agencies, in particular Deer Springs has a much smaller sphere than its boundary, so it may be prudent to explore realignment of the spheres going forward, and that's something that will not be undertaken at least until Part 2 is completed. Also, the alignment of Rincon's sphere, or Rincon's boundary to reflect the service areas where Rincon provides through the two improvement districts located within their boundary, ID1 and IDA, and then to prepare the comprehensive sphere updates concurrently. In particular, we have staff has come up with 9 recommendations after assessing the adequacies and performance of the services relative to boundaries and the region and all that. And in particular, we have identified 4 recommendations which are worth discussing here at the meeting. Number 5, to extend or expand the contractual relationship with County Fire, and that echoes the evolving nature of County Fire and their provision of fire protection services in unincorporated portions of San Diego County, and this recommendation would be a way for Deer Springs to sort of catch the wake of that ship as County Fire evolves, and for the agency to evolve with them through their relationship. Number 6, LAFCO recommends that we streamline the growth and the alignment of wastewater services in a developing area of the region, in particular the Harmony Grove area, just to delineate who's going to be the wastewater service provider as it relates to Rincon and the city of Escondido. Recently, you're probably aware that Rincon was designated as the wastewater service provider for the Harmony Grove Village development, and so this is just to reinforce that sentiment. Number 7, to prepare an informational addendum to options between the Rincon Municipal Water District and the City of Escondido, and this is really just an exploration of options for boundary realignment if warranted. We're not presupposing any outcomes here or signaling that either agency has anything at stake to lose or gain. Really just doing our duty to inform decision makers in the region by exploration if there may be more effective and efficient agency organization options possible. And finally, number 8, boundary realignment to reflect existing and planned services for Rincon, and that really speaks on some findings that we came up with as it relates to the resident population in Rincon's parent boundary, and the number of residents that actually receive services. There's a large difference in the total there, and so there may be options to potentially realign the boundary to more accurately reflect where those residents that receive services are located. And that is all I have at this time. Review commissioners.
And Chair, just to jump in, so this is a draft. This is for the commission to hear any testimony from the public, and I know we have the general manager from Rincon here, and there may be others, but this is our draft. This is your opportunity to tell us if we're on the mark or if some additional smoothing before we get you a final is in order. So we're looking for feedback as you see fit.
Are there questions from the commissioners? Yes.
I do. I guess there's a few different terms that were thrown out here that are not terms, but statements that I don't quite understand. So Deer Springs Fire Protection District right now is serving an area outside of its sphere. And so its sphere is not, I guess, updated to where it should be, or how did that happen, that they're serving
Yeah. And so
entities outside of their sphere?
I'm going to jump in just on that topic. So a good third of the Deer Springs jurisdictional boundary, I don't know if we have that map, perfect. And it's better distinguished in your report. It was purposely excluded by your predecessors on the commission back in 1983, 84, because at the time, and it still holds, that portion of Deer Springs is in the sphere of influence for the city of Escondido. So the commission in 83 said, okay, it's in your boundary, Deer Springs. However, we ultimately see that the city of Escondido will grow north, and as they grow north, we're signaling to you right off the bat that you should be detaching these areas as that happens. We had one example in recent memory, the North Avenue Estates proposal that hit on that very topic. But to Commissioner Desmond's larger point, this is an example where now in 2019, it's an opportunity to revisit planning assumptions and perhaps better sync up those lines.
Well, has it, I guess, have they not given up the territory that I guess it was intended since in 1983, or is it?
Correct, and partly because the city of Escondido has not grown north.
Okay, so the city hasn't grown that far north, okay, which is fine, all right. And then the overlap, I guess, between Rincon Municipal Water District and Escondido's district is that blue hatched area, is that my understanding?
Yeah, Alex, do you have some numbers to help quantify?
I do. 63% of Rincon's boundary is, and their service area is located in the city of Escondido. So only 37% is located outside of city limits.
So
Just as an explainer for that map you're looking at.
yeah, please.
The blue areas are unincorporated that are in Rincon. The green areas are incorporated that are also in Rincon. The yellow areas are incorporated that are not in Rincon. So the blue and the green just indicates parts of Rincon that are either in the city or not in the city, with the green being in the city.
So the
Very
green,
confusing map. Very.
Well, it's confusing,
It's
but
a
that
confusing
goes straight to the
relationship.
point.
I guess what's also confusing is how come there's, I guess, two different districts both serving the same service in the same areas? Is that my understanding?
Well, yeah, power-wise, there is this inherent overlap, and that's what Alex was mentioning, that while there are internal distinctions, when you look at this map from LAFCO's perspective, this is what the state looks at, that speaks to the need to clean up to some degree, or at least clarify.
Okay,
I do have one.
good luck with that.
One
Well, I was looking at the overall map on 366, and that was my question, because it looks, those are the ones with the circles, and if the legend is correct, then the city of Escondido is smaller than the Rincon del Diablo encompasses all of the city. It's very confusing, and I don't know how
It's
you're
essentially
going
the
to
case.
delineate the maps to make them less confusing because of the boundaries of where they serve and so forth.
If you really want to be confused, you should look at the infrastructure map, because it's even more intertwined.
And then where, I guess, on this map is the subdivision that's being proposed out by this Safari Park? Is that even shown on here?
Robert might be able to.
It's not shown on here because it is outside of the sphere of Escondido, but it's basically directly to the west. The Safari Highlands from, sorry, where am I?
It's out to
There we are.
78. Okay.
It's out here on the far eastern side of the city. It's directly north of the Safari Animal Park.
Okay.
So it's north of the city of San Diego and directly east of the city of Escondido.
Okay, and the struggle, I guess, is that it's being conditioned or has been conditioned to be part of Rincon's?
Well, that project in particular, the majority of it, the specific planning area is almost 1,000 acres, and almost all of it is outside of the sphere of influence for Escondido. So when we have a project that comes up like that, with that big of an area outside of a city sphere, it automatically brings in the question of a comprehensive update of the sphere of influence for the city. So that was the driver for the sphere update for the city, but that project's been stuck in the development approval process for the last 6-7 years.
Erin, did you have comments?
I do.
Since this is your
This is my district.
Good.
I've got a couple quick comments. Rincon's been working closely with LAFCO staff to go through this MSR, and it's been a good experience. They've been very receptive to our continual comments and input and different things that have come up along the way. There's one big thing in the recommendations that I think needs to be smoothed over, as King would say, and I think that it's number 3 in the MSR, but I had it on the tablet, but I think it's number 7, where we talk about looking at doing a future work plan and an amendment to separately assess the governance options. And as a director for a special district that's doing its job, that's fiscally sound, that's representing its constituents adequately and providing safe, clean, affordable drinking water, I have no problem with our doors being open. We're transparent and people looking in and seeing and assessing the roles and how we relate to our community members and our neighboring agencies, in this case Escondido. So I'm okay with that. The second part of the statement though, right after the recommendation to make an informational document, it says, and possibly transition with merit to facilitate a functional or political consolidation with the latter including but not limited to creation of a subsidiary district. I think that part needs to be omitted because it's kind of saying what you're going to come up with in your future work plan and what you're kind of jumping the gun on what you're going to come to with that informational document. And I think that for those of us that are familiar with the particular area, the new governance through the city of Escondido is even more bold in their continual statements they want to take over Rincon. And if you look at it and the infrastructure and plan and play and everything, maybe we should take over the city's water. But you never know. But that's what that document's for. It's to assess those things. And I think that it's a little presumptive with that second part on that one recommendation. But overall, LAFCO's done a good job in this MSR, and it's a little bit of an odd situation that it is broken into 2 parts, and I hope that the city of Escondido sees it a whole in the future. And from my understanding that that's how it's going to be approached later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the first-hand information. Are there any other questions from staff?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
question for Alex. Have you had any discussion with either or both of the fire districts about what might happen going forward?
Yes, we had a good meeting with Chief Rick Johnson and Tony Meacham in regards to Deer Springs and some issues and concerns that they had, and so we've definitely been in discussions. And
What kind of feedback are you getting so far?
just to clarify, feedback, I mean, it's been good feedback, so we've been, everything's been on the table out in the open, and
Okay, so you shared with them the idea of reorganization and consolidation.
Let me just jump in. So with respect to Deer Springs, that's a separate topic. Our comment really for Deer Springs is, and Alex did a great job of commenting on this. When they were created, and the last time LAFCO checked in on this region in the early 80s, there was no county fire authority. So Alex's comment is, as the fire authority has now been established and evolved, it seems like it's a good opportunity for those 2 agencies to see about partnering up further than they have today, if it makes sense. But there's no consolidation comment at this point in our review regarding Deer Springs or even a functional comment with respect to them contracting with anyone other than with CAL FIRE at this point for field services.
No, thank you for that clarification.
Because they are contracted with CAL FIRE at the present time.
So Alex, I'm sorry, are you saying that there might be a consideration for increased sphere of influence for Deer Springs? Because you're saying some of the properties aren't attached and stuff.
Barry, you want to use your mic
Oh.
so that it can be caught on the tape?
My voice is fading now.
There you go.
No, for Deer Springs, is it possible that the sphere of influence could be increased for some areas? There were some areas that you had listed up there.
yes, it is possible.
So So once again, Alex, all options are on the table, is
Yeah.
that correct? Okay.
And if I could just add, so possible, but we're not saying necessarily probable. So that,
Okay.
part of this is just us documenting, here's our check-in. This is for you to tell us if we're on the mark with respect to the services. As we now go forward, Alex, Robert are going to start talking to all the agencies about their spheres with the understanding that we have this one big component that still has to come forward, which is part 2. We have to incorporate the city of Escondido's MSR into this process.
That's why it's merely possible at this time. It's really a work in progress.
I guess what my concern is, like with Alpine Fire Board, one of the annexations we requested recently that went through, we were already servicing some of those areas. Is this an area where Deer Springs is already servicing it, and they should be it should be increased, the annexation? That's my wondering.
I don't believe it is it, Robert?
We just,
Because well,
just had a meeting with Deer Springs staff, and part of it was to educate them on the process of the MSR and the sphere update and what it entails. The other part was to discuss specific issues and areas within and adjacent to their sphere that may need changes given the intervening time from when this sphere was adopted. Parallel to all this is the review of the Escondido sphere, and the Deer Springs sphere is somewhat tied with that. So the city of Escondido is actually asking for a retraction of that sphere closer to their incorporated boundary. So that would precipitate an expansion of Deer Springs sphere proportionally. So all of that is, again, on the table in terms of discussions, but we've made a lot of effort to get in touch with the agencies to make sure that they understand the process and have an opportunity to identify areas of concern.
Madam Chair? Oh, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, my understanding is that we're not taking any action today, correct?
Correct.
And that there's no predetermined conclusion at this point. And I would hope that staff would take into consideration what Commissioner Lump has stated to make sure that open-minded, independent analysis, and then we get back the information and then we can make a decision on how to go.
Absolutely. I think
Thank
that's
you.
exactly what we're doing.
Alex, just I would encourage staff to not miss an opportunity. This is a pretty hodgepodge thing there, so if there's a way to clean it up, I recognize the sensitivity of the unincorporated areas, it's the special district saying, don't come into my house. But at the same time, if we have an opportunity to, I'm talking more on the fire side than the water, but to bring all those agencies together, I would hope that you would pursue that. Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
I just have one more. Sometimes smaller districts do a much more better, that doesn't make sense, do a much better job and are more efficient in their operations than a bigger entity. So I hope you keep that in mind as you look at this.
Commissioner,
One last
did you have
question.
one question?
Ian, when will we revisit this again?
Presumably in October, at some point.
I have a question. Just considering, not trying to go one way or the other, but when we have on the water side, the large overlap between the city of Escondido and Rincon, what are some of the best practices or outcomes that we're striving for? What's the goals when we have this kind of, to separate them or to, I'm not sure how that really works. So what's the overall objective, I guess, moving forward when we have such an overlap?
Well, first and foremost is to document where there are overlaps and then identify agnostically from your staff, here are the options, Commission. To Commissioner Lump's comment, yes, we perhaps gave a little too much description of what some of those options may be. We talked about functional or political consolidation. Others could be just simply MOU agreements, back office agreements where one entity does something for the other in terms of sinking water or sewer services. So we would, if you go forward with our recommendation to prepare the addendum, we'll do that agnostic analysis. We'll bring it back to you as part of a future work plan. You would decide when we do that, right? Part of this is you deciding when the priority level is there for us to go forward.
And then I guess what is the state, I guess, requiring, or what are they looking for when they see this as well, I guess? I realize this is local control, but I'm just curious what the objective is when we have this type of situation.
It just, to that point, so I believe, and Robert could help me about, 8 years ago, Little Hoover sent out a committee to audit San Diego LAFCO, and they look at these kind of things. When did San Diego LAFCO look into opportunities to govern sync? At the time, you had just done the fire study, so you were well prepared for that answer. But the state's interest is LAFCO being this voice and instrument, if need be, to make things more efficient. To the comment that was made earlier, we are not presupposing that smaller is not more efficient.
Any other comments? Okay, I do have one speaker slip. Greg Thomas, General Manager of Rincon, Del Diablo.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner, staff. Greg Thomas, General Manager of Rincon Del Diablo Municipal Water District and Fire Protection District. So, yes, it's a very confusing map in that regards. We were always called the donut around Escondido the whole. We were first formed in the early 50s, post-World War II, as you know, the growth of the area expanded greatly. There were a lot of little mutual companies that's in your history there, and city and us just kind of took different folks over at that time, and that's how our service is. So I do want to thank Keen, Alex, and the staff, Robert, et cetera, related to this MSR. We've had an opportunity to work closely together, provide data to them that's necessary for this. And so I want to commend them on their openness and our inner workings on that. Of course, we didn't get a chance to see the recommendations. That's purview to the LAFCO staff and to the commission here. But just wanted to reemphasize too that some information related to us as a service provider for sewer. We were 2018. This commission approved us for exercising our latent power to become a sewer agency in the Harmony Grove Village area. It also set the 2 other developments in the unincorporated area as for Rincon for planning. We're doing that right now. We're doing a sewer master plan for those 2 future developments that were approved at the Board of Supervisors last July 2018. And LAFCO finalized our sewer agency in 2019, in fact, June 4th. So we were finalized as a sewer provider for the unincorporated areas in that southwestern, that one recommendation. So I think it was important that the commission understood some of the inner workings related to that. So we too are interested in seeing part 2 of this. I think as you look at the recommendations that we see, I know that I've seen a draft of the Escondido's MSR. It's on their website. So I'm just kind of interested too as we go forward with this, that we have all pieces, all 3 parts to it, as we move forward to a full recommendations. And I echo what Commissioner Lump had said related to this. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to see this piece come back, the Rincon, Del Diablo, and Deer Springs, and
Then you'll
Escondido's gonna
take
be
final
2 weeks.
action on part 1, presumably as early as October, and then it is possible, if not probable, that by December you'll see a draft of part 2. And just for the clarification, Chair, so Mr. Thomas correctly noted, there is this draft MSR out for the city of Escondido. We did not prepare that document, and it's not on our website. It's on the city of Escondido's website. So I didn't want the commission to feel slighted. We will get that document, we'll review it, and we'll bring it to you. We will ultimately make our own recommendations and determinations off that document. City of Escondido will not do that for us. That's our job.
Okay, we're going to be looking at water, sewer, and fire with the city's Escondido's MSR.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't understand how we can make a recommendation for part 1 with water, sewer, and fire, and then have part 2 come in. They may be contradictory to each other. How do you?
If staff sees a contradiction, we will certainly flag that, and in this document, we've noted that as additional analysis is needed, we'll do the reconciliation. But right now, your task under state law is to provide a snapshot, as you see it, of these 2 districts, independent of City of Escondido. You have this overarching governance question, though, as it relates to the region. That's the issue that we are going to ultimately need to bring back to you once both parts 1 and 2 are done.
Is it common practice for a city to do an MSR? I thought LAFCO did the MSRs.
Well, it's not unheard of. It's not common practice. This was a situation that arose with my predecessor leaving before I showed up. At the time, the developer thought they were going to bring a project through city council a lot sooner, and they needed to move faster, and the agreement was, you fund it, you pay for it, bring it to LAFCO, and we'll take action at the commission level. It just so happened, by the good work of Alex, he moved a lot faster than the city on this. So, we were being efficient.
Very good. Okay, any other questions from staff, before staff, board staff?
Can't wait for next edition.
Somehow, some way, it's just,
Madam
you gotta
Chair.
figure a way to make it clear. Yeah.
Madam Chair, just a general comment. My compliments to Kane and staff for all the hard work you do. It's amazing how thorough the board package is for us. We appreciate that and the knowledge that you bring to us individually. Good job, Alex and others, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay. You left us all confused. Let's go on to item number 7B, designation of labor negotiators. That's an action item.
Yes, this, if you notice in the upcoming closed session, one of the items is a discussion, is a performance review and discussion of salary and benefits. So under the Brown Act, we do need to have the commission designate a labor negotiator, who that is the designee who will have this, a conference with the labor negotiators. That's closed session item 10F as in Frank. So this is just really a housekeeping matter to comply with the Brown Act. Need to have you designate one or more labor negotiators who can negotiate salary and benefits for the executive officer.
And I believe the recommendation is for that to be the Executive Officer Compensation Committee, Commissioners McKenzie, Jacob, and Mathis.
Do you need a motion on that? or-
There's an,
Yes.
yes, this is an action item. So
Oh.
there's a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt those three she just mentioned.
Is there a second? And there's a second from Commissioner Willis. Roll call.
Commissioner Salas,
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Aye.
Commissioner Kersey,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacob,
Aye.
Commissioner
I say
Vanderlin,
no.
Yes.
Commissioner Willis,
Aye.
Commissioner Wells,
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond,
Absolutely, yes.
Well, 'cause you got-
8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 absent. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Item number 8, executive officer report.
Just very quickly, all the commissioners should have on the dais a notice from CalAFCO of their upcoming CalAFCO conference. I know we have 3 members, Commissioners Willis, McKenzie, and Vanderland, who have been registered. More the merrier. So if you check your calendars and you're interested in coming to Sacramento at the end of October, please let Tammy or Erica
Beautiful
know.
downtown Sacramento.
And then also, all of you will have a final bounded copy of the very good work Linda did in preparing the Julian Municipal Service Review. Again, this is for your own files and or your staff. And I wouldn't be surprised if we self-nominate this document for Project of the Year at CalAFCO. So, good work to Linda. And then last but not least, we are dark in September because of Labor Day. You will see us in October.
Are we gonna have a 400-plus page
We will get it,
agenda because
we're
we
moving
didn't
down.
have a September meeting?
We will do better.
Are we supposed to nominate Joe for?
We did that as part of the consent calendar.
Oh, we
So
did, okay.
Chair McKenzie is running again. Hopefully she commits to it for her seat at CalAFCO.
That is all, thank you.
Okay. Where are we on this? Okay, commissioner announcements, requests for future items. We'll start down there with Commissioner Willis and go this direction. Any?
Nothing else.
No? Good question.
Okay, quick, on the PowerPoints, I don't see them as part of it, and maybe I'm not adept to it. On the iPad, I don't see those on the iPad at all, the PowerPoints that you're presenting. And could we get those as part of the presentation, maybe at the end of the item, so that we, because there's a flash up there and you're reading them off, I can't.
And then it's gone.
And then it's gone, I can't grasp it as quickly as I'd like to. So if that could be made part of the agenda, I'd like to appreciate it.
Thank you.
I didn't see not the PowerPoints. They were used up here?
The PowerPoints are clearer than some of the maps.
Thank you.
Commissioner Van Dalen?
Good meeting, thank you, staff. Thank you, Chair.
None. And no request for future items? Okay, at this time, we'll go into closed session. On conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, initiation of litigation, anticipated litigation, and then finally, but not least, the employee performance evaluation and conference with negotiation. So,
That's it.
so stay tuned.